Would that they be?
Excellent. That's fine.
Okay. All right, can we have somebody move?
Jim Cordy, I'll move the minutes for approval.
Okay, move Tardy,
Second.
second, I'm sorry, Wise. Okay, any changes to the minutes as posted, corrections, additions? Seeing none. Now we can go back, Michelle, I believe since we're all here in person, we can go back to just a voice vote on these things that are,
Correct.
okay.
That will make it full and easier.
Yep, okay. So all in favor of the minutes as posted, say aye. Opposed? None. Okay, minutes are approved. Next, moving on to the approval of the agenda. Can we have someone move the agenda, please?
Roberts, support.
Move Keeley, support Roberts. Any changes to the agenda? Additions, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda as posted, please say aye. Opposed? None. Okay, moving right along. There's public hearings. We have two scheduled public hearings for tonight. The first, a public hearing is regarding the Encore, a conditional rezoning. That would be an adjustment to the conditional rezoning, kind of the plan as well as the agreement, which is why it's before us tonight. So I believe Michelle will take care of this one.
Yep, we'll start. Okay, so as Matt has said, this is a public hearing to consider an amendment to the Encore, excuse me, the conditional rezoning agreement for the Encore Musical Theater. They are requesting the elimination of certain voluntarily offered and approved exterior improvements to the property located at 7714 Ann Arbor Street. The applicant is voluntarily offering to remove existing nuisance exterior lighting features that currently face on Hudson Street, and he's proposing to replace them with decorative shielded fixtures. So pursuant to the executed and recorded conditional rezoning agreement, until the Encore obtains the deed for the property, as you know, it's a land contract currently, the schools have to be part and parcel or signers in some event or in some form to the agreement. They have signed the application. They have supported the second amendment. I'm sorry, the amendment that is in your packet tonight. And so this little section of the agreement just kind of explains why there's a need for all three parties to consent to what could happen tonight. So what you have in your packet is the application for the amendment to the conditional rezoning. You've got the written request by Mr. Cooney, who also happens to be here tonight. You have the site plan sheets that are pertinent to the requested amendment. You have a draft amendment to the conditional rezoning agreement. And you also have the original zoning agreement that was dated July 20th, 2020, and recorded with the Washtenaw County Register of Deeds on July 31st. I've provided in my memo the amendment procedure just for a refresher for you. I won't go over that again because I think you all realize that just like the initial conditional rezoning, the everything being offered or requested is voluntary on the applicant's part. This is not a negotiation when it gets to planning commission or city council. It's a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If there is something, if there are questions, concerns, etc., that you don't feel have been adequately addressed, but could be by the applicant taking some time, you do have the option of postponing, but that's got to be entered into very carefully because you can't be looking at, it can't be looked at as a negotiation. So the review considerations, again, the applicant voluntarily places conditions on the amendment to the rezoning agreement. Planning Commission, City Council considers those. Excuse me. In order to recommend approval, Planning Commission must make findings and determinations that the requested amendment does not substantially change the spirit or intent of the approved conditional rezoning that was granted in the first place. Staff has reviewed the applicant's request and offers the following comments for your consideration. There's a reduced scope of work and voluntary conditions regarding that scope of work. The applicant seeking approval to reduce the scope of the required exterior improvements. Specifically, he's proposing the elimination of the concrete planter, the benches, the brick paver patio, a masonry clad screen wall, a structural canopy with signage that would have been at the entrance that faces basically west. The applicant has voluntarily offered in exchange to remove existing lighting fixtures that are on the building that face the Hudson Street facade. Those fixtures currently generate annoying glare and are a nuisance for the homeowners that live across the street. Those light fixtures would be replaced with a new decorative feature that would be shielded and direct the light downward, thus eliminating the nuisance completely. The applicant has completed all other exterior and interior improvements, including the installation of the bike racks and the landscaping. The Planning Commission must determine if the voluntary conditions offered by the applicant to eliminate a known existing nuisance counteract requested reductions to the scope of the exterior improvements. Number 2 are site plan sheets. The applicant has marked up sheets L201, A111, and 3A300 of the approved site plan set to identify the changes that are being proposed. Should this go through, this is one area where you can make a condition of approval, and that is for those sheets to be properly prepared, signed, and sealed by a registered landscape architect. That's for sheet 201. And for sheets A111 and A300, they would have to be prepared, signed, and sealed by a registered architect. Both of those would be in compliance with the requirements of section 2108 of the zoning ordinance. I have provided you with 3 motions, suggested motions. The first one is that the proposal counteracts that the elimination of the known nuisance counteracts the scope or the reduction in the scope of improvements for the approval or for the that's being proposed by the applicant, and you recommend approval. And the only condition would be the revisions to the site plan sheets as previously noted, or based on the information provided by the applicant and staff, etc., you do not find that the voluntary conditions offered to eliminate the nuisance counteract the reduction in the scope of work, and therefore you'd be recommending denial. In that case, if it's a denial, you would not be requiring any change to or any conditions of that. Or you have a postponement because there's something you feel the applicant hasn't adequately addressed, or you've got questions or concerns that the applicant would need to consider. So with that, unless you have any questions for me, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cooney and Mr. Burdock, who is his representative from McFate, to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cooney, would you like to say something?
I think that the major thing for us was the wall and the improvements that we offered up. We ultimately felt like weren't improvements. We have a nice, really kind of beautiful open landscape and the original architecture, and then this wall just felt like it didn't get us what we had hoped. That's the primary reason.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's pretty short. It's
Yeah,
it's
it's
really pretty straightforward.
It's
Yeah.
really just that wall right that front.
Okay. Well, we'll call you back up if we have questions in a minute. I don't know if Mr. Burdick wanted to add anything or.
Can he be unmuted or?
You can't unmute yourself, Mr. Burdick?
I don't know if you'd like to add anything at this time, or if not, that's okay.
No, I don't think so. I think Dan will cover it just fine.
Okay.
I couldn't quite hear that. I assume. I
He
think-
said, he said Dan covered it.
So, okay, all right, you covered it all. Okay, good, thank you.
No,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we are going to open the public hearing for anybody that would like to comment on this proposal, which is the Encore rezoning, conditional rezoning, what do we call it, modification, for lack of a better word, I guess, to the agreement there. So we will also, I will open the public hearing at
7:14.
thank you, 7:14. See nobody present here live. Do we have, we do have a call. Oh, yes, we do have a hand up. Okay, Mrs. Phillips or Ms. Phillips?
If you introduce yourself, please state your name and address for the record.
Sure, Lisa Phillips, 3360 Edison.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, I unfortunately just saw this that was posted in the paper about the lighting and took a walk over to Hudson. And we have the exact same lighting in the alley producing the same glare into our backyard. I did not realize that it was possible to ask for some mitigation of that. So I'm wondering if Dan would be kind enough to add those two lights to the Hudson lights, if that's possible. I know it's a late request.
Okay, thank you. We won't respond directly during public comment right now, but I assume you will hopefully keep listening and we may get to your questions during deliberation for your request. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to this issue? Any other hands raised online, and there's nobody else here, so with that, we will close the public hearing at 7:16. Okay, so with that, we now have, we'll now be in planning commission discussion. As Michelle pointed out, we have on page, we have some suggested motions, so if somebody would like to make a motion, we can open it up for discussion by the planning commission, please.
I'll make a motion. Based on information provided by the applicant and staff, comments received during the public hearing and reflected in the minutes of the November 1st, 2021 meeting, the planning commission determines the voluntary conditions offered by the applicant to eliminate a known existing nuisance counteract the requested reduction to the scope of exterior improvements and where's my computer. Oh, shoot. Hang on. Recommends approval of AP 2021.22-06 ACRZ application for amendment to conditional rezoning submitted by the Encore Music Theater Company to City Council, subject to the following conditions, and then the condition is as read in the
As stated.
suggested.
Okay. Which, for anybody listening, would the revised signed and sealed plan sets that were submitted. Okay, so is there so move Roberts, is there support? Support. Support Phillips. So do we have any commission discussion at this time? Again, we did hear a concern voiced through the public, but we may get through that discussion. So I already see a hand up. Yes, Mr. Phillips.
I support this because these items were not really conditional or major points when we made the approval. This wasn't, these were all voluntary elements of the design that the applicant submitted. And none of them, from my understanding, were pivotal in our deliberations or our decision. So I therefore support removal of them.
Additional.
Is there a procedural way to address the callers concerning?
I mean,
You can ask.
I think we can ask right now. I mean, we will ask Mr. Cooney right now, I think, but we do, I believe, need to react on what we have in front of us today. I mean, again, because of the conditional zoning nature of it, we can ask for the comment, but I mean, that could be something, again, I suppose if conditions.
If he offers it up.
Right, it could be added, so that's not an additional one, yes.
Well, it wouldn't have to be defined, like where are they, what's.
Yeah, well, exactly, we would need to know some.
We wouldn't just ask the
specifics.
applicant on the spur of the.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I don't know if we have enough detail, but I guess with, Mr. Cooney, would you like to address it? Do you understand what the, member of the public had asked specifically? Because I'm not familiar
I
off.
think we make this really easy. We'll take care of it. I think they're on the side of the senior center, right?
Yeah,
These
yes, right next to
are,
the alley.
And we will get those lights taken care of as well.
Okay, we appreciate that, thank you.
My pleasure.
And I can just say again, I understand from walking, I've walked by the Hudson side enough that I thought, yeah, those lights were there for a long time. So I appreciate you taking care of that, because I know at night they're like those, I'm completely unshielded, so I can understand why that's an issue. So we appreciate you offering that. Okay, additional comments? Yes, Mr.
I'm not particularly a fond of this, this motion. The entrance that was, and I wasn't here during the initial deliberations on this. And I do want to commend Encore for everything they've done there. It's just, to me, it's amazing. But this entrance is the entrance. And once that goes away, it becomes the back door of an old school building. I mean, right next to it, there's a regular old man door. And there's nothing to highlight this very, very important entrance, the entrance. And I would much prefer you coming up with maybe a scaled back version that that draws attention to this very important feature on the building. So that's kind of my take on it. I know there's a cost issue. Obviously there is, and you folks have done so well in that regard with what you've done there. But at the same time, I think that's such an important entrance to the building, to an old school building, that I'm reluctant to just wholesale say, oh, you can go away. I also, tell me if I'm wrong, because I didn't read in what you put together that the lights were in exchange. They were simply something you were going to do anyway. In other words, it's not necessarily you're counteracting the fact that you're taking away this and you're putting in a couple of lights. I don't think that was tell me if I'm wrong here, but
Let me clarify, yes, because those lights were never part of the original approval.
right. So anyway, that's my thought on it. I hate to see that go away wholesale. There might be a reduced version, there might be something that can be done that still makes the presence known there, but I think it's really important.
Keith, they do say in their cover letter that their intent is to upgrade this existing entrance at a later date. And, we are at the peak of building costs right now, and I think
If that's the case, and I saw that too, but what does that mean at a later date? Putting this in at a later date or doing something else at a later date would be my question. And in which case, some sort of a plan for what you propose to do at a later date. Unless it's simply doing this at a later date. Which
I
okay.
think he's already said that the design turns out once you got into it isn't an improvement, but that they do want to upgrade the entrance. That's the way I read it. Now, whether I didn't see that explicitly in the new amendment, but I didn't know how you could do it. Just how do you do that?
So that's a good discussion point. Now, Michelle, typically though, if they were to add something else, say the motion passes tonight, this is removed off the plan. But typically, to add things like this, it wouldn't really trigger a site plan. It's because they were linked into the conditional with the rezone. Like, I mean, if they wanted to come back and add something later, like if they just came back and added this exact same thing, not that they would, that wouldn't.
I think,
trigger
yeah, that would
site plan.
not trigger them coming back to this.
Yeah.
This comes to you because it was part of the approved site plan.
Right.
I don't have the jurisdiction or the authority to allow them to take it off. As part of improvements of property in a particular zoning district, they could come back and add a new feature to the entrance. It could be the same thing that they're taking off now, but
But that wouldn't trigger site plan.
that wouldn't trigger site
Right.
plan.
So typically,
That's just regular zoning compliance.
yeah, so, I mean, because I do understand your hut has a really nice entrance feature to have there, but I also understand their point. Additional feedback on that regarding the entrance feature there? Yes,
Yeah, I just like to point out that it was not a requirement at the time we approved it. They weren't doing the entrance renovation because we required it. It was a voluntary element.
that is correct. Yes,
To me, I agree with Tom. It just seems to me that if this is something that they see as being really beneficial for their building, that they're gonna do something at some point. At this point, they've determined it's not to their advantage to do it. Maybe they want to look at something different in the future, and I think I'm okay with that.
yeah, I would think so, because again, the only thing is it does kind of get more blank without it, but I am fine with it being removed in the hopes that somehow we can stand it up in the future, but it's only in their best interest to do that, and I believe they will. They put a lot of time and money into this project, so, yeah, I do. But no, I appreciate the concerns. Additional concerns, I mean, any other thoughts on that?
Beyond what I just said.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like me. Any other concerns that?
Here's a parallel to me. Mill Creek School, totally unrelated, put a big, long entrance portal going in.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't have to do that, cost them a lot of money.
Yeah.
So nice. It was that
Yeah,
touch.
long.
It's those sorts of things that would never be added again if that was built. And that's my concern here.
So hopefully, okay, I guess I don't see a lot of other questions, but yeah, can you?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm sad to see the entrance go, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna do something to it eventually. I mean, with construction costs up right now, I'm sure there's 1,000 costs in this whole project for it, so. It still meets the intent, I think, and I also think it's very nice of you to do that for those lights. On the other side, actually, that one whole side, it's been in like, it's like the commercial abutting the residential. So it's one of these like friction.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's very nice to. Like that. So. They're very neighborly.
No. That's okay.
Okay, thank you. So we can hear some concern, but I don't see a lot of other questions or comments, so I think at this, oh,
I
yes.
do have one thing.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, like, was there some sort of expectation of when this entrance was supposed to be done?
So in the development agreement,
Yeah.
or in the conditional rezoning agreement, it laid out a process by which they had to have everything done.
Okay.
And that process expires July of next year. Excuse me. If they didn't have everything done and hadn't obtained final zoning compliance by, I can't remember the specific date, I can look it up and think, but I know it was July of next year. They risk losing conditional rezoning and it being rezoned back to what it was originally, which was the R1 zone. And which in essence means they would no longer be able to operate the theater. So this isn't a last minute come to you. It's a well thought out. We know what we've got, we know where we're at. Coming out of COVID, the fact that they've gotten as much done as they did,
Yeah.
is in some ways remarkable. So,
Thanks. I don't see any other concern at this time, so could we have a roll call vote, please?
Roberts,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Hill,
No.
Wise,
No.
Hubbard, yes. Hardy,
Yes.
Heatley, yes. Marsh,
Yes.
Kowalski.
Yes.
okay, motion carries.
Okay.
7-2.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, moving right along, we have another public hearing scheduled for tonight.
I'll be in touch.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That public hearing, the next public hearing scheduled is to consider the proposed text amendments to the zoning ordinance which is regarding plug-in electrical vehicles and requirements around those. So with that, the public hearing, I believe, will have probably, I think Michelle did the report, so would that be you again, Michelle?
That'll be me.
Okay, all right, so we'll hand it over to Michelle.
You're moving this along really good. Okay. So you're conducting a public hearing, as Matt said, to consider regulations that would allow plug-in electric vehicle stations. And the proposed text amendment, as I've already said, allow plug-in electric vehicle stations in residential, commercial, and industrial districts. The footnote for you is that when the public hearing was put out, I accidentally included Article 14, which was C1 Commercial Business District, and identified that that had to be amended to have accessory uses and structures. It actually already has those in there. It was my oversight. And so what you actually are considering today is the amendment to Article 2, which is definitions, and the amendment to Article 3, which are the general provisions. You'll get a new section 3.33, plug-in electric vehicles, vehicle stations. Any new residential development or dwelling would be required to be PEV ready. And although it's not required, the regulations encourage developers of new commercial or industrial projects and commercial and industrial redevelopment projects to provide or make ready a site for PEVs, but it's not required. So whereas before you had a basic outline of what the amendments were going to be, it now identifies the exact article and the section, and then sets it up into the proper format. So section Article 2, oops, it's not section 333, it's definitions. And it lists all the definitions from, in alphabetical order, from accessible electrical vehicle charging stations through the charging levels to a definition of electric vehicle charging station, both public, what they call private restricted and public use, all the way down to plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Then you have Article 3, general provisions. That's where section 333 comes into place. And you now have the purpose and intent, which we reviewed before. The permitted locations for level 1 and level 2 stations, and then level 3. You have the readiness requirement for residential as well as for non-residential. You have the general requirements for multiple family as well as the non-residential developments, and those get broken down into parking, accessible spaces, and then they are basically the same for multiple family and the non-residential when it comes to lighting, equipment, standards and protection, usage, signage, and maintenance. I can go into more detail if you'd like it, but you have seen all this, and it's all in your packet. And for timeliness, I won't read it verbatim unless you want me to. I don't hear it. So let's get right into the text analysis and the review criteria. There are basically 4 of them set forth in section 2306, and they come right through the zoning enabling legislation. So there has to be a documentation, or documentation has been provided from city staff or the zoning board of appeals that there are problems or conflicts in the implementation of specific sections. And while there aren't conflicts with any existing regulations, it's the fact that we don't have any standards. And earlier this year, I should say, in the late summer of 2021, U.S. automakers announced that they anticipated a 40 to 50%, that 40 to 50% of new vehicle sales by 2030 would be electrical models. Additionally, the city received an inquiry from a property owner of downtown commercial property about being able to have a charging station for his building, for his tenants. Plug-in electric vehicle stations, whether they're residential or commercial, are not currently listed in the ordinance as principal permitted or special land uses in any district. So amending the ordinance as proposed addresses both the short-term and long-term demands. Has there been reference material, planning and zoning publications, information gained at seminars or experiences of other communities that demonstrate improved techniques to deal with certain zoning issues, or that city standards are outdated? Again, building off what was said number one, information, resources, and ordinances from SEMCOG's electric vehicle resource kit and planning hub were utilized, and the cities of Auburn Hills and Ann Arbor were also compiled. Their ordinances were compiled and presented as information to assist in developing a set of regulations. Everything that was presented to you is also included in your packet, from the PowerPoint presentation to staff members. C would be, or the third criteria is the city attorney recommending an amendment to respond to significant cases. That is not a factor in this case. And then the amendment needs to, or would, promote implementation of goals and objectives of the city's master plan. And while this wasn't the primary trigger of the amendment, the proposed text amendments would implement certain goals and objectives in the master plan, specifically to guide development, to foster the responsible use of land, conserve natural features, preserve the small town character, and to make sustainable use of existing public services, utilities, and infrastructure. And then prepare for shifts in mobility due to technology changes. That's a big bingo there. And the other one, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Consider alternative energy systems at a scale that preserves the character of the community. That would be another bingo, I would think. So you have suggested motions, 3 different ones. 1, to recommend approval or denial of the proposed ordinance amendment as presented. The second one be to recommend the proposed amendment with specific modifications. And the third would be to postpone action on the amendments for staff to look at areas of concern that you might have. So.
Okay, thank you. With that, so we don't have a petitioner or applicant, of course. So I guess with that, then we may move straight to the public hearing. And so this time we will open the public hearing at 7:36. Seeing anyone in the public audience, we'll check online. If anybody would like to address this, please raise your hand. Give it a minute here.
7:37.
Oh, it's 7:37. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing at 7:37. Okay, so with that, as Michelle said, we do have some sample motions on page 50 of our packet here. So I know we had a lot of discussion last time, so or we have a question right away. All right.
Oh, I have a motion.
Or a motion, even better.
So pursuant to section 23.06 of the city of Dester zoning ordinance, together with information presented by staff and input received during the public hearing conducted by the Planning Commission on November 1st, 2021. The Planning Commission recommends to City Council approval of AP 2021.22-27 text amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow and regulate electric vehicle stations subject to the following changes. That residential homes will not be required to have any sort of outlet or power requirement as part of their construction process, or be otherwise regulated by the city.
Okay, so that's a motion. All right, should we move? Okay, so we do have a motion. Move. All right, we'll have some support. Okay, we can have discussion.
Who did we have support from?
Yes, sorry, Roberts. So move Phillips, support Roberts. So the motion, and then I'm sorry, you said with the removal of the single family, correct?
Right.
Basically requirements.
Really any requirement, but yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's the discussion.
Okay.
And yes, yeah, take it
So
away.
I have
Tom.
so there's a reason, this, to me, this is a complete abuse of the authority of the city. And it doesn't belong in zoning at all. It's a misunderstanding of how homes are constructed and how they're permitted. And that is, I have to blame staff for that and their misunderstanding of the permit process. First of all, there's a reason we have windows in houses, we have toilets, we have doors, windows, and we have sinks and water and all those things that make up a home. There is no part of that, any of those elements that's required by zoning. Those all belong to the building department. If the state of Michigan sees fit to require people to do something for their own good, like have a toilet, they put that in the building, and they make that a building permit requirement and put that in the residential section, of the building code. That is not something that goes in an ordinance. There is no outlet in your house, or never has been, that's required, that requires Michelle or Michael to go into your house and walk through and make sure you have something. That doesn't exist. We regulate parking and site elements in our home, and use of the home, but nowhere will you see in any zoning ordinance a requirement for a fixture. And the fact that somebody at the city decides they like something enough and they've been sold by apparently salesmen of some sort on something they really like. Today it's electric vehicles, maybe in the future it's gas tanks, or they're having their own electric power station or battery pack somewhere to run your house. And they decide that you should have that. That's the kind of path that we're headed down here. And that's why I made the motion to make it. Thank you.
Okay, we got some feedback. Oh, yes, Mr. Cardy.
I won't belabor this because I think we discussed it at length last meeting. Just a few thoughts. We plainly have the power to do this. I mean, we were all here for the presentation on how aggressive Ann Arbor has been, how they are essentially forcing new developers in both commercial and residential projects to do much more aggressive things than we've done here. We have the power. Part of what we do is we set policy. We set policy through what we enact. This is good policy. This is policy for the future. It's literally the most minimal thing we can do. I think it's unfortunate to attack staff the way staff was just attacked. I mean, to suggest that they're doing this because they've been approached by a salesperson is almost beyond the pale. Staff was asked for this in the meeting that you did not attend, Tom. Asked for it. So I think that's unfortunate. So I'm going to vote against this, and hopefully it's defeated, and I'll move the original motion number 1. Thank you.
Additional feedback on that. So we do a motion on the floor.
So Tom, what you're saying is that this is Chet, that this rightfully belongs in the not the zoning ordinance, but in the building code.
Correct. State of Michigan, for example, there's been an ongoing debate about fire suppression in homes for years, many years, probably decades. And it is not passed through the state of Michigan. But it would not, we don't see communities deciding that they like a particular element of that and start requiring fire suppression in homes. That doesn't happen. That's not an element of zoning. Whether we have the power to do that doesn't happen.
So if this isn't passed, how does staff or anybody else go about having it as a code amendment? They can't, right? I mean, it's not Dexter's code, building
Right,
code.
it's the worst case, which is an individual who wants an electric car, puts it in themselves without guidance from the city, which is, I know, I'm not.
Agree with Jim, to attack staff who are doing their job in a public meeting like that. Not too fond of.
Thank you. Yes, Hal, you got a point as well?
Sure, so, I mean, on the fence on this one, you know, we definitely, I think that Michelle's done a great job putting this whole thing together, and Mike. You know, electric cars are here to stay. I think a point of consideration, which bears some weight, is that at this point zoning stops at the outside wall. And this essentially will put the, at least in the garage. To check that one floor. So, you know, not to say that where to stop, but no. Right now, we have a nice delimiter, which is the outside wall.
Yeah, that's true. As Tom said, most of our actions take place. We don't typically regulate anything within that building. Well, not to say again, I think zoning can allow that in cases, but that is correct, right?
So that keeps us to the public realm, essentially. Not the private inside part.
That's true.
So for that reason, I do support the.
On this one, okay, all right, that's good. Yeah, additional thoughts on that. So again, the current motion on the floor right now would be to take what we have here, but to basically remove the requirement, I think, for the single family. So that would be kind of just, I guess, an advisory code, because that's the one requirement in there. So, yes, Michelle?
So just a quick point of clarification. Well, most of what we do is the outside physical. We do have to know what's going on in the interior of a structure to ensure that the use of what's on the interior of that structure complies with the zoning district. So if you've got a residential structure, for example, and somebody comes in with a remodeling of a basement, and they've got a full kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, we make sure there's also an egress window, but we have to make sure that I don't check for code, but so that the person doesn't have to provide a whole second set of plans for the building department, because that's there, and I stamp it approved from the zoning component. The building department doesn't make them come back to get a whole nother set of plans stamped just to have that egress window. But with a full kitchen in the basement, we have to ensure that it's not being set up for a multiple family in a single family residential dwelling. With this particular set of ordinances, we've set it up so that, yes, it's required for residential, but it's a restricted use. So you're not having somebody in a residential neighborhood suddenly allowing anybody to use it and charging for it. So there is a use factor involved.
It is a point of clarification. The egress window is not a zoning requirement, and that's awesome, Michelle, that you do that as a courtesy to help inform residents of the code. But in fact, you're not required to do that, and it's a nice thing to do, but it is not egress windows required by the building code.
Right.
As every other element that you listed is, as I said, zoning use is a different thing. There is no part of zoning use that tells somebody they need an outlet for their stove or a gas outlet for their washer or dryer rather. So that's my point. This is a misplaced requirement, and I would be surprised. If actually, I would also ask that if this does pass, that our attorney take a look at it.
Which was standard. Okay, yes, Dustin?
If I remember correctly, Ann Arbor has gone to this, correct?
Yes.
So I'm assuming that Ann Arbor has had attorneys look at this also.
Yes.
So I'm gonna be like, if we're gonna be looking for the future and what's to be expected and try, how do we help this along? I am 100% think that we should have that outlet put in. Because just for the costs and everything for the future and, you know, trying to make our planet to be better. So I'm of the opinion with Jim that this is something that we need to do, not only for us, but for our kids. And such. So, and I know that maybe that doesn't need to be in there, but I'm just gonna put.
Again, a point of clarification, this isn't us doing it. We're not paying for it. The city is not buying something for somebody. We are compelling somebody else to do something because we have an opinion about something. That is departure from our typical process.
Okay.
I would say this, though, if somebody's in this business, I mean, this is for new houses. Right, this is for, I don't know if there was a minimum number, is any new home?
Again,
With
there was
an
an
option,
option, yeah,
basically.
right.
Most of those are gonna have 200 amp panels, like almost always. In other words, you've got a lot of extra panel capacity in most new houses. So it's not like you're bumping people up from 100 amp panels to 200 with this thing. You see what I mean? There's probably gonna be capacity for this plug in the panel that was gonna come with the house anyway. In other words, you're just talking about a wire and a plug.
Okay,
Not a
so
whole
then I
upgrade
think,
thing.
all right, let's have a couple more closing and then we can probably wrap up the discussion, but I don't know if Jim or, I'll let Tom, who's up, fine, Tom and then Jim. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, again, I think you're debating elements that where zoning does not apply, which is what kind of electric panel somebody has. That's not our purview. And to decide that or decide whether what we want somebody to have is reasonable for them to afford when they're writing the checks. If the city wants to decide to, you know, provide these to each new person building a new house and drop it off at their house or have it installed by, you know, one of the contractors for the city, that's a different matter. But compelling somebody to put in because it's a fashion statement or whatever, for whatever reason, is a different, that's a different thing. There is nothing in anybody else's house that's like this. This is a unique line that we're crossing here. And I think the fact that people like it is concerning, and that because the next thing might be not something you like. So, and we're going down a path that I find disturbing.
Okay, well, let's give it to Jim for a final thought, and then I think if we don't have anything else you would add, we should probably take a vote. Yes, Mr. Carty.
First, they made Steve Brower put the bike racks in. And that's the perfect comparison. We make Steve Brower put bike racks in into every project he does. And he complains about it with every project he does because of the cost, but we make him buy them. Why? Because we've concluded that bikes are good for our community. We want our community to be bike friendly. Why? Because it's good for the environment, it's good for people. This is the same exact thing.
Okay, all right, so with that, I know Tom is different if you want. So,
All
right, I think,
what I'm
yeah.
gonna say is obvious.
Yes, exactly. I think we've got a couple of, I think we got the feelings out. So that's good. Nope, it's always good to express the viewpoints, but I think at this point, I don't want to squash conversation, but I think I should, so we can at least wrap up this section of it. So I think with no other discussion on the motion again, so right now we'll take a vote. So right now, just to be clarified, the motion is for approval, both the condition of the removal of the requirement for the single family, the plug in there, just so everybody's clear. So with that, and then it would move Phillips, supported by Roberts, I believe, at least, and then, yes.
Is this also a elimination of the restrictions on the EVs for residential as well.
Correct, that's the motion.
Oh,
It would be everything residential goes away.
Right.
Not just the one-
Oh, yeah, actually, yes.
The restrict-
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah, that's a big, so
There's
everything, right,
restrictions on what you can do with these
correct.
chargers.
So that was correct, right, Tom? Yes, okay, so that would all be going, so thank you for that clarification, anything with residential. Okay, so is everybody kind of clear on the motion, so I guess with that, can we have a roll call, please?
Hardy,
No.
Phillips,
Yes.
Hill,
No.
Wise,
No.
March. I'm sorry,
No.
Hubbard, no. Robert,
No.
Heatley, no. Kowalski,
No. Well, you didn't expect, okay, so that motion does not pass, so, would somebody like to make a new motion?
I will.
Yes, Mr. Wise.
Pursuant to section 23.06 of the City of Dexter zoning ordinance, together with the information presented by staff and the input received during the public hearing conducted by the Planning Commission on November 1st, 2021. The Planning Commission recommends City Council approve AP 2021.22-07 text amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow and regulate electric vehicle stations as presented.
Okay, move Wise, support Cardy, so that would be the motion, of course, I just shuffled my packet, which is on page, where's our page number? We got it.
50.
Okay, all right, so the original motion above there with no conditions added. So everybody straight up there, it's the motion made with no conditions added for approval. Okay, so do we have discussion? I mean, maybe not, since it's kind of the same as we just discussed. Tom, you want to share? No. Sorry.
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Okay.
I want to attack Jim, but.
Okay, all right. No, Jim, but you're good? All right, okay. Jim, we're all good here. Okay, seeing no new discussion, can we have a roll call vote on that motion, please?
Let me discuss something.
Oh, wait, sorry.
There's two allows in here, so are we allowing it twice as well?
No, it just.
No.
Okay.
I just asked that.
Yeah, okay.
I checked, it was in the second one too. I thought it was on purpose.
Yeah, no, that's just a typo. Sorry
That's
about
fine.
that.
Just a typo. Okay, the one that was your only question point. Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, so I think with that, we're ready for a roll call vote, please.
Hill,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yeah.
Marsh,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Hubbard, yes. Wise,
Yes.
Heatley, yes. Robert,
Yes.
Kowalski.
Yes. Okay, moving forward with that one. All right, next up, citizen pre-range participation. Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, so with that, pre-range citizen participation, we have none scheduled for tonight. Reports of officers, chairman report, nothing to report from here. Planning commissioners, anybody want to share? You guys stand up? Yes. Kyle?
Well, I will.
Ted?
Simply that the ZBA, nothing happened there.
Yeah, okay. Nothing new, something exciting. And any other committees we got? Well, we have the zoning ordinance a little bit later, the committee update on that. Let's see, council rep, anything exciting from council law?
Really?
Nothing exciting?
No, I had a lot last time, but I mean, Michelle
Yes,
got
that's
to
okay.
some of it and, you know, no, we haven't.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right, thank you. Okay, so with that, I guess we'll go to the community development office report.
So, before I get into my report, I think Mike has something to.
I need to announce this will be my last month with the city.
Oh.
I've accepted the position elsewhere, and it's been great working with you all and all the city's boards and commissions and staff. Enjoyed our lively conversations like tonight. But I will be starting a new position with Carlisle Workman, so I will likely be seeing you all again soon.
You just can't leave us, right, Mike? You wanted to leave us, but someplace where you could still see us. Right? We get it.
First, I thought I was out, but
Just didn't want to go that far away. Well, thank you. It's been great. Mike, how long were you? How long have you been with us.
3 years.
Yep, it's longer, wow. Okay, well, great.
Time for millennials.
So, yeah, we appreciate all your assistance and knowledge in the meeting, so thank you so much. And I know you've been a great help to Michelle, so
Yes.
that'll be a loss right there, so. But yeah, exactly, maybe in Carlisle, you'll come back and we'll be seeing you in a different shape and form, so there we go. All right, thanks, Mike. Okay, anything else?
So, just a couple, you've got my report in front of you. Before I go into any details, do you have any questions for me?
What page is your report?
It starts on 97.
I have a question. The batting cages, and where exactly would that facility be?
So, Northern United has that large chunk left of undeveloped at the back of its property. I think it's probably somewhere between 3 and 5 acres. Northern United would like to sell that. And this is the person that's interested in it. This is the use that you would like. Currently, we don't have that. We have a personal fitness center. And also it's an interesting, interesting that one's allowed and one's not. But
The way they've expanded over time, I'm mildly surprised that they would give up a couple of acres.
I was too, but it may be that they've hit as big as they're going to go.
It's an interesting use. I mean, for what it's worth, we had a request 5-10 years ago or so in Ann Arbor for a large indoor tennis facility in a research park, and they did request a zoning amendment actually to allow it. And the city of Ann Arbor did go through the process, review. I worked on part of it. We looked at a lot of different things and we did end up allowing it. Again, that's just for what it's worth, but indoor recreation is allowed within the research development. But one point with that I thought was interesting is that then it's actually, Tom, it's the same facility. It involves some of the site. So that facility didn't go forward. And now we just had another large, like kind of higher tech or good research facility come in to take that. So what I think through is now I was going to use the majority of that area that was going to be the tennis facility for now kind of exactly what research and development was intended for. So that's kind of something to think through here, that we did change it, that didn't go through, and now we've got exactly what we intended besides marijuana grow facilities, taking up research and development facilities, so, or lots. So I mean, that's a good thing. So again, take that for what it's worth. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a good kind of compatible use, but
It's very interesting. When I
know.
moved here from Florida, we lived in Florida for 10 years, 82 to 92. And I had our daughter when we were in Florida. Her gymnastics and dance places were all in industrial parks in these very large spaces. They would look very similar, you know, which one is the Bishop Circle condos. That's that single building that is one story. Is deep.
Multiple tenants.
With multiple,
Yeah.
and that was something that was allowed all over Florida, and came up here, and you know, once I went through all my school, industrial parks were very segregated by uses, and it's just been very, very interesting. So
It's true. If you look at it, some of the just don't go to the indoor trampoline facilities and things like that. Many of those are in industrial. I don't know the zoning, but they're the same.
yeah.
They're probably all industrial facilities.
So, but I did want to get
Interesting,
your
okay.
feedback to know, you know, what the temperature of the planning commission is. If this is something that you absolutely, no way, shape or form, then I need to let that potential applicant know that it's an uphill battle.
I'm not wild about it from the standpoint of, I feel like we have only so much space to attract industry and tech, and that is clearly one of the places where we would do it. So,
Yeah.
not wild about it.
Yeah, we probably echo that. Although
At the same time, you got
vacant land.
8 acres right there at the front that we have not been able to get developed. It's just a real interesting. How long do we want to wait? And I'm not trying to push you.
Yeah,
one way or
no,
the other. I really want your feedback.
Plus you combine the bats with the brew pub.
You know, it's better than access.
Well played.
That's one you'll never get me to
Well
understand.
played.
Well, over here on Second Street, that's RD as well, right? Where he was gonna put his, where they're gonna put their storage.
Yes.
There you
Work
go.
there, right? Seems like it would work there.
It still would have to be rezoned. Or you'd have to add that amendment.
Use, yeah, it's a use.
Just like here.
Just like you.
Interesting.
But you bring up the other factor, which is, it's not just,
Right.
if you make this amendment, it doesn't just affect Business Research Park off Des Moines. It would be any place that we have the R&D. So
Well, we don't have anywhere else that this could go though, right? I
indoor
mean,
recreation is allowed in the C1 district. They tend to be smaller.
yeah, but
Retail
those
type
kind of
spaces.
big, like, I'm thinking those big,
Almost like
tennis.
those big
Yeah, they
air
look like big.
domes.
Yeah, no, we don't really.
I don't know that but I don't dislike, I don't want to live next to one, but you know, I don't dislike. them.
Well, and the good thing is you have standards within the R&D district that wouldn't allow it to be that big area.
Right, that's true. Tom?
Yeah, I think R and D land is tricky to develop, and as Matt mentioned, Ann Arbor has a large project that I'm doing right now, it's 130,000 square foot facility that's gonna bring up to 300 jobs paying in the 200,000 a year range of scientists, biotech. So this is, to me, it's way over zone for something like this. This is something that could almost go in an agricultural district somewhere with really inexpensive land. It's not a high traffic area or anything like that. But I think, you know, the one thing about our zoning in the tech park is that it ideally is a place where that will drive commerce and jobs and you know, improve our, you know, residential, you know, outlook as well, and pull demand into the community. I think something like this is a very light use for something that has a lot more potential.
So Michelle, for example, where the wellness center is all C1, and they've got outlots there. If they wanted to put it there, they could, right?
Yep, you certainly could.
And it's closer to the schools, which are, who's using it.
Correct.
So yeah, I'm
Okay.
So other stuff, you know, sorry, Dustin.
I think what Tom said was very accurate, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I don't know if we gave you any clear direction on that. so-
Actually, you have. I've given you real clear direction.
Okay.
So
Fine.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, thank you.
Social district, we're gonna have a social district again. It's going to be expanded along the south side of Main Street, across Baker and connect, I'm sorry, across Baker and then across Dexter. Across Baker, then across Ann Arbor Street to connect the Fillmore. It will not have a tent and the parking lot will not be closed between Dairy Queen and Beer Grotto. So staff is working with the different property owners or businesses to make sure that they're ready for this. With special cups, special labels, don't drink when you cross the street. Other than that, you will be able to consume an alcoholic beverage on a sidewalk in the downtown. That's in the district. Please.
How European.
How European.
I see a couple, but I don't know whether.
I just want to add,
Maybe
sorry.
Ron and Jim.
Yeah, sorry, Jim, I can't see you at all from where I'm sitting. I just want to add that a lot of our discussion when we approved this was centered around really trying to reduce the burden on our DPW. So that's, you know, the elimination of the tent, so that they're not going to have to deal with the snow or opening and closing it. So it's really, we've cut it, scaled it back, I think, for their benefit, I hope, anyway.
Okay, yeah, but Jim had a question.
I was just curious who voted against and why.
It was Councilmember Griffin, and she has never been supportive of this idea since she got on council.
Kyle, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, just a question, does this mean the street parking will continue to be.
So street
outdoors.
parking as it's closed currently ends November 30th. If council allows it again next year, it would go into effect. I have a feeling that, that it could happen again next year, but the north side of the street may not have the 10 spaces. Some of the beverage service businesses, they have been supportive, but to a point, and I think they've reached their point. They're getting a lot of complaints from their customers. They have to walk a long distance, it's inconvenient. We all know that there's 900 spaces in the downtown within a 5-minute walk. It's perception, and business owners get tired of unhappy clients. So it's something we are going to have to think about. I think there's a way to still have it, but maybe the outside seating area for the two businesses on the north side have a smaller area next year. It's going to be one that's going to come up to have that kind of question.
I will say this. Somewhere in here, the barriers, the water barriers, what we call them, were described as beautiful. Those suckers are ugly.
So I do have a solution to it. One of the things that, I mean, any kind of marketing and design beyond just a normal streetscape is all new for the city and this DDA. This DDA has been primarily, as our city council has been, very infrastructure focused. It hasn't been to do promotions and marketing and events. So being cognizant of that, helping them step their toe into the water very carefully, and so that they feel comfortable about this new direction that they're going is really important. And so staff's tried really hard to make it very well thought out, so that everyone understands where they're at, why they're doing it, and what could come next. And so this is a learning process, it's progressive. Excuse me, next year, instead of just a banner on one side, we'd invest, my proposal will be that we invest in something that drapes over and goes for longer distances. That's going to require different graphics, different types of what is it you want to market? How do you want to brand this? So that they will look nicer. Initially, there were some people that really liked the blue painted palettes. It was different, but there have been other people that absolutely don't like it, didn't like it from the get-go. Now, or others that thought they liked it, but now it's like, yeah, no, but you gotta, regardless of whether you like it or not, you have to give the business credit for trying to make it look as good as they could with the limited amount of money they had to work with, but still being able to improve their business in other ways. So we can certainly do those blankets, if you will, banner blankets over them. They will look a whole lot better. It beats concrete barricades though.
Because people have like dressed them up. Maybe you have like a art contest, who can.
Wait, sorry, Jim had his hand up.
I just would like to make a sort of speak up for the possibility of not having big barriers at all. Like if you go to certain parts of Ann Arbor or Plymouth, they have no big barriers. They have just rope. And if that's legal, that's what we should do.
It's legal. Our risk management representatives would not support it because the risk is too great.
Remember, I'm a lawyer.
Yes.
I'll tell you how you get around that in a second.
Oh, I'm sure. But I also know that on council, the comfort level to do something that minimal is not there.
Yeah, I would just say this. you want to have seating there, you sign a waiver that you're responsible for anything that happens.
Well, they do provide, they do do a hold harmless, and they provide a certificate of liability insurance with all kinds of conditions and cities named as an additional insured, all of that. Council, there is not a comfort on council to go anything less than those water barricades right now.
I'll tell you too, the day those blue ballots went in, like the day you asked me about that, I remember feeling very like stuck because you clearly thought they were pretty cool. And I wanted to be like, oh my God. They look
I was coming from the standpoint that we had a business that was trying to do something and not just relying on the DDA or the city to do it. Which isn't a criticism of the other businesses, it's just, they stepped up. But it beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think you got more questions.
sorry, yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I did get a complaint from somebody that those pallets caused the site obstruction exiting. I exited there, I didn't, there were gaps. So,
Yeah.
and they're low enough that from a view where you're sitting, you sight distance, I thought it was fine, actually, unless you're sitting in a really low riding vehicle, then you might have had a problem. But covering them with something, a tarp or something, that would cause a problem, I think. And as to Jim's point, Ann Arbor is not comfortable with just having those little ropes out. Our attorneys have been struggling with it because that's the kind of thing we allowed on sidewalks. But once things started moving to the road, we didn't have regulations for them, and we're still trying to figure out what to do with that.
That's fun.
Okay, wait, sorry, Tom and then Tom, because Tom has it.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do that. We're not reinventing the wheel here. People's kind of, the layman's term of liability is always, as Jim, I agree with Jim, it's always very much exaggerated from what the reality is, it seems like, especially when it comes with cars. Somebody could have bollards there with nice bollards with ropes between them, something like that, that would be more than adequate. But there's communities that do handle this much nicer than the way we're doing it. And I think this has been, it's kind of unfortunate what we have there now. I think even if planning commission was involved in approving stuff like that, wouldn't be a horrible idea, I don't think, because then we could have some discussion about aesthetics instead of the way it's done now, where people just do whatever. 'Cause I think they're horrible. I think all of it, it looks really trashy. The pallets and the barricades and all that. It's really not appropriate for all the effort that's been put into the downtown appearance up to the state.
We could go into something that's more of a requirement as a true parklet platform.
That's really.
And then you've got,
and then,
your,
I mean, I guess the problem, I don't have a problem,
Rails.
but it's part of the issue. I think it's also, how long is this is this gonna be a continual? I mean, I don't know, is it?
so one of the things that, the reason it was done initially was all due to COVID. The reason it was continued wasn't necessarily COVID related. It was more related to the fact that it brought a vitality into the downtown that people on DDA and council really liked. We might be at that point where we can go to that next step to make this something that happens on a regular basis, where we step up to parklets as a requirement. If this business wants this, this is the parklet, this is the standard, and it's an investment. You need to make it, as opposed to having the orange and white water wells.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is there a way to kind of get, Tom touched on, a couple of people touched on it a little bit, like a little bit more form. Like at the planning commission or something, that if these people want, because again, I see that advantage, but then again, I don't know if it's fair to just, to the other businesses necessarily, that if one restaurant, or I'll pick on the Grotto, but just they expand across, which is great in a way, but then if a different business is there, there'd be a nice way to make sure that we're consistent, so that.
The way we've done it is, the only way that the food and beverage business could expand into parking spaces beyond their storefront is the adjacent business owner had to be okay with it.
Oh, yeah, I remember discussing that with the outdoor seating, which was weird, the sidewalk seating, or whatever.
That's-
But it's the same thing, I guess.
It's the same thing, it's
Yeah.
more, it's not a requirement in the ordinance, but it's the consideration given. And the businesses, like I said, the neighboring businesses have been supportive, but that's, their patience with what is wearing. Because it, like I said, they're bringing out from the.
It does, it's such a, it does, it's been such a bad, I mean, or do we need that parking?
I would say at this particular point, the Main Street parking, there are times when there are still gaps on Main Street, even in the summertime.
We have plenty of parking.
We have plenty of
We have plenty of
parking.
parking.
This is, brings this vitality.
Part of why I think there's gaps there is because there are a lot of people, I actually have no elderly friends who hate pulling out
Yeah.
from those
Yes.
spots.
Right.
And so, I mean, my friend is always going to park somewhere else. And I think there's probably a fair amount of people like that. It's hard to pull out. just
In
from
peak, in peak
particular-
time,
Yeah.
it is hard, I've had to do it.
But here's the bottom line, Michelle, I think that if it's a good idea, and if the council is that safety conscious, we should be able to find some middle ground for something that's more attractive.
Mhm.
And yeah, it'll cost more money, but you know, it's one of those things you don't get attracted with cheap. And if it's something that, if it's attracting business, if we want to encourage it and the businesses want it, they should be willing to spend money for something that looks better than that,
Mhm.
because it's pretty shabby.
Mhm. I can make sure and with Member Hubbard to communicate that to city council.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will. Sorry to raise my hand, but I agree with all of this. I mean, I think that it was great that we were able to do this for the businesses when they really, really needed it. But Tom, you're right, it doesn't fit all of the work that we've done to make the downtown look as good as it does. So I don't have a problem with any of this discussion.
I'll just throw something out there. There's like nautical looking bollards with a lot of character to them that are very stable that it would help with that. And
So
that's-
I agree, they have proven the concept of the street seating and expanding it and what it really does to the life of the town. I think that's been the major value. And I also agree that since we're at that point and we kind of like it, maybe there's some more permanent solution to it. Maybe, I mean, they did flowers on this year, and of course they did the thing, so maybe there's some way to spruce them up, you know, until we can, I don't know if it has to go to capital improvements or if it's DDA or what, but anyway, something. But I would say that as somebody with little kids, I love the fact that these things are a solid barrier. There's no chance of the car coming out, you know what I mean? And so, you know, even if we go to the grotto, we don't sit where there's the little chain fence, you know, we go way in where it's safe. So anyway, so plenty of things to consider in this, but it's.
Right. Well, thank you for that input. Let's see, there was some.
Okay.
We did have, Friday, we did have the meeting with MEDC and the Mill Creek Brewery. Well, it's not Mill Creek Brewery, it's Grand River Brewery that wants to do the small brewery restaurant. And now it sounds like they want to add an accessory bike rental to it. They did submit for conditional rezoning today. I have not, it came in late this afternoon. I did not have a chance to look through it. I probably won't get a chance to look through it until next week when I get back.
Do you even know what it's conditional rezoning to?
It's conditional rezoning to Central Business District. But like I said, I have not looked at it to see what their voluntary conditions are, what they're offering, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, what they're talking about. One of the things that staff did float at the meeting, because obviously talking, they have been from the get-go about the bridge connection over the river. And on one hand, it sounds really, really good, but both, both pre-application meetings, it was brought up, well, who's gonna own it and who's gonna maintain it? Because this, from the city's point of view, why do we wanna take out another bridge? And what really, how does that really benefit the city? And so one of the things that was talked about is that that's a $250,000, possibly a $300,000 cost to them. Well, if you're going to do that, why don't you do something that the city could probably get behind, which is connecting the place to water? Because if the water's there, then it can be taken by others farther down.
You're saying water, drinking water, not the water in the creek, because at first I thought you meant, okay, because the old livery, but right.
Because the cost was going to be.
That was gonna be my question is.
They don't want to do that.
So the concern with the bridge connection is, as you just expressed, who owns it, who takes care of it?
Right.
Because that's a lovely location for a bridge connection, quite honestly, for them.
For them.
Yeah, but I don't know what advantage it
It does
gets.
to the city.
There's no
right.
link. I mean, there's no linkage except to their.
Right, it provides people the chance to park by the fire station and walk over. It provides people who are coming off the trail direct access. But there is access, there is a sidewalk, but there is a concern about walking or biking up that driveway between the fire station and the river, so.
Yeah, oh, sorry, general, yes.
If we were to rezone that central business district, and this project were to go belly up halfway through,
Mhm.
they could develop some real interesting stuff over there, right?
Depends on
What they're.
it depends on if they come in with the conditional rezoning of all uses in the district, whether they're permitted by right or special. We don't know which ones they're picking or choosing at this particular point. Like Encore picked certain ones, but not all of them. It'd be for that exact reason.
It's a slippery slope, Michelle.
I agree with
I
you.
tell you, I'm very negative on that rezoning.
Or what about have they talked about a PUD then there?
That was what was suggested, was keep the existing zoning and go PUD, and they didn't want to do it. They don't want to go into that kind of cost.
This is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, well, why is the cost? Okay.
When you were a kid and you wanted to buy a bike and you didn't have enough allowance, who did you go to?
Took it for my sister, I think.
Or your mom and dad, can you please help me? It's that same thing, we want to do this, and it's got some really interesting aspects to it, but they can't afford to do it. And so they're looking for different ways to make the numbers work. MEDC thinks that they might be able to qualify for CRP, but they're not sure. And it would require a commitment from the city, and I don't know where that.
You just need more.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one, so.
I mean, it's a challenging site, and I'll get that, but again, water is the more pressing need, it seems like, for that site, and for additional development around that area, that could be a true public.
Or maybe you can let them have the higher density and let they have the water there.
Except they're not proposing density, so.
Yeah, that's.
No, they're only proposing the restaurant or
residence.
bike. So.
And it's not that big of a site, really, when
No.
you take in the setbacks. and all that.
Actually, it looks like it's the same amount of distance as from the Dexter's Pub strip there, that whole group of buildings. It looks to me like you could.
It's
put
about
that
the
whole
same,
strip
yeah.
right along there.
Yeah, it's wider than it looks, I guess.
Yeah.
But the right away, it's got the railroad is a huge right away.
Right.
It's a little more than, I think Allison said 1.78 acres. That's gross, that's not.
Yeah, and then with the easements and the way it's kind of pointed. you
Right,
lose
and they
area.
are gonna lose a little bit to the road commission for the roundabout. They don't seem to be worried that the roads would be closed during that. And that scares me to death, but
Is the roundabout on the horizon?
the city, the Washtenaw County Road Commission asked the city to participate in a CMI grant. So they'd be looking, if they get it, they'd be looking at construction somewhere between 25, 26. So
Good place for a roundabout.
What's it do to,
could be very helpful there.
what's it do to the ANW? Can they squeeze it in there?
It won't hurt the AMW, but it may take a little bit of property on that area too, because they're gonna have to configure it in a way that doesn't take any property from where Mill Creek and the bridge and all that is, and they have to stay away from the viaduct.
Yeah, okay.
They're not gonna widen the bridge.
The viaduct, the railroad, that's a historic bridge.
I,
And
I know it's historic and everything, but if you stop traffic there,
That's one.
the roundabout is not a roundabout.
Nobody cares it's historic. It's a
You
pile
can
of
fit
money.
2 cars in there.
yeah, the
That
cost.
bridge is what's saving our town from being a highway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as a resident of town,
Yeah.
I love that bridge.
It's the perfect traffic calming.
Calming.
Well, I agree, and it's beautiful.
And I,
It
we
is.
lived
You're-
west
that's
of
what we
town
need here.
for 30 years. And yeah, over there, it's like, okay, slow down. He's gonna slow down in town.
Well, see, I turned left out of Westridge,
Right.
which I love because of the bridge.
Yes.
My concern is like, don't widen that because then I'm not gonna be able to turn left.
When U of M sold the Gordon Hall property to the Dexter Historical Society.
That
All
closed
chances
that.
of creating that dual bypass lane, whatever, all went away.
Okay.
It's deed restricted, it's here, it's historical, it's to the state, it's everything.
Yeah,
You
there's
can't-
an easement. down
You're not
there.
getting,
You're
yeah,
not getting-
you're not getting.
Well, when they looked at it last time, I don't know if it's still true, but the railroad was active. And they said that they were gonna require a temporary trestle be built around the bridge during this ride. So it could remain in place. That's what killed the project.
That's
Yeah, the trust, right.
That is crazy.
They said they would not close those cracks for a minute.
Oh, yeah, there's no way. to go
That's
through
what
those
killed it.
streets.
Okay.
And they won't let you put a new crossing anywhere either.
Not great.
Not that great, unless they could take like the Wiley one. I don't even know if they let you swap them. I remember we went through this whole.
Yeah, way back when,
Yeah.
you closed one for
I did
another one.
something and- Yeah.
No, it's not good. Okay, so sorry, we got off a little bit. Okay, so.
Those were the most important things.
Okay, any questions, other questions for Michelle on her report? Okay. My agenda here, citizens wishing to address the commission, any citizens wishing to address the commission? Please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not really looking at you, I'm looking at the
Sure
screen.
you're not.
Okay. All right, seeing none. All right, moving right to unfinished business, none, new business zoning ordinance update from the subcommittee. You guys just met.
Yep.
What's the latest and greatest?
Do you want to make this your final?
Sure. Talk about the draft subdivision control ordinance. Talk a lot about design, talk a lot about right of way widths, I think. Overall, I think the opinion was to try and encourage continuing the downtown pattern to the extent possible. Density, not continuing the 99-foot right of way tradition, allowing flexibility when appropriate for curves, especially in alleys. I think those were the highlights. Is there anything else, Michelle?
No, other than the what's coming over the next few months.
So the committee is at a point now where they'll be reviewing a complete draft at their next meeting. And then potentially the meeting after that, we schedule a joint meeting with the planning commission and council.
Wait, for which, that would be for January then?
January, February.
Okay.
Around the moment.
Once you've got a complete draft, will be the next one.
They're gonna look at a complete draft. It won't be in the InDesign format.
Yeah,
But
right.
it will
with all the
be,
stiffiness,
you know,
yeah, but the substance is
The
there.
substance
right.
is there, that last, let's go through it. Have we hit everything? What have we forgotten? And they're supposed to come up with questions at that meeting to talk with planning commission and city council so that we can get whatever feedback is needed before they start to put it into the InDesign in January.
Guys are really.
So there's a lot of minor updates, but there's some stuff that we're all gonna want to talk about.
Yeah.
In a bad way, but
I spent a certain amount of time kind of looking through the latest draft, and it's hard to follow because of all the line outs.
Absolutely.
And I was wondering, is it possible to get a clean version of that?
Yeah.
But with still some I was thinking the same thing, but still some change. I don't know how you could.
Because basically, I have a lot of questions, and it's hard to know.
It is, it's hard. I don't know how you could make it a little cleaner, but still show the change it.
You may not be able to, that's the
Right.
line, because of the different iterations.
Yeah, that's what.
I think that the thing that the committee has, first of all, the committees work really, really hard. Like, you gotta give them props.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that is changing is you're taking an ordinance that was very suburban mindset focused implementation and bringing it into a more urban context, from regulations to intent to purpose to it's just very interesting. And I think that will come through, even if it's not a line item that you can see what those changes are.
Yeah.
You as a planner are going to recognize it.
Or even a clean, like a completely, I'd like to see even a completely clean version, yeah.
Yeah, we can make sure. you do that.
Because obviously we need track changes, but it's hard for me to read that. in all these different lines and colors,
Yeah, we can make sure. we do that.
but it's important, obviously.
So we're coming down to the end of all
Good job,
this.
guys, good job, committee.
Yeah.
They really crank it. Anything else from committee members to share for that? Good, okay, no questions. All right, well, so business for next meeting, so it would be December 6th. The zoning ordinance, we'll have, of course, we'll have a subcommittee update again. Public hearing, oh, do you think that will be on there for the 81A? Probably not, right? The
Oh,
condition-
it'll be on because they have submitted.
Okay.
So, and because this isn't a negotiation, and it's not a full site plan, it's just a concept plan. Full site plan would come
All right,
after
so-
it went through. This will have a public hearing. You do have the ability to postpone based on concerns, unless you're absolutely adamant that you don't like what they're presenting. You just make that recommendation.
This will be one of those really tricky ones, I think, for all of us, maybe because the concept, so we're going to have to decide based on concept and
As
really the
opposed to
zoning, and we have to think kind of almost beyond the concept, because what we're gonna be allowing is that zoning, the conditional rezoning. And without,
Well, the difference between it and Encore had an existing building. In order to understand that site, you had to have a more complete existing site plan to know what it was that was being proposed and approved. With this one, you can go with the concept because it is just that. This is the idea. This is the zoning we want. Like I said, I don't know what uses or if it's the entire district.
wow,
But
surprised.
we will, Megan and I and OHM will be going over it and provide you with as clear guidance and options, discussion
Sure you will.
points.
All right, well, we'll look forward to that. So everybody be prepared for that one. It'll be an interesting discussion, I'm sure.
Yes,
And then the Grandview Commons condo documents.
yeah, that probably is gonna be January.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not.
Probably January.
Okay, so with that, we're back to citizens wishing to address the commission. If you'd like to address the commission, raise your hand. Looking for raise your hand. She's going, no, not you, Allison. No, she's not raising her hand. Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn? Move Wise, support? Support Hill, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. Oh, that's right.
I know.